Have you ever left a conversation feeling drained, even though nothing major happened? It's not a coincidence. Some people don't just take your time, they quietly drain your energy. Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, emphasized that certain types of people can profoundly affect our energy field without us even realizing it. And the scary truth is, nowadays these behaviors have become so common that they're considered normal. But the truth is, they are not normal. In this video, we will uncover 7 toxic behaviors that are silently exhausting you, and how to protect yourself before it's too late. Don't take your eyes off the screen, subscribe to the channel, and watch until the end to discover truths you've probably overlooked for years. You are not weak for feeling hurt. And no, you are not too sensitive just because you dare to feel. What you are experiencing has a name: emotional invalidation. A subtle form of manipulation that many people don't realize until they can no longer hear their own inner voice. You open up, not to blame, but to connect. Yet what you receive are shakes of the head, furrowed brows, or worse, a response that denies your entire experience. It's nothing, don't make a big deal out of it. And so you fall silent. Not because you agree, but because you've learned that silence is the only way to avoid being hurt again. You learn to self-censor, like an actor rehearsing lines in their head before stepping onto the stage. But in real life, no one pays for a performance that makes you lose yourself. Carl Jung once said, "Anything that is not brought to consciousness will come to us as fate." And that is exactly what's happening here. Every time you are not heard, you not only lose a chance to connect, you allow others to rewrite the story of who you are. You begin to doubt your own intuition. You question your own sadness. And you learn to soften your emotions as if they were something shameful that needs to be hidden. But you need to know this: your emotions are valid. Your intuition does not need approval. Your pain does not need proof. And sensitivity is not a burden, it is a gift. A gift that you must learn to protect. Because the truth is, you cannot heal in a place that made you bleed, and no one has the right to make you feel guilty for daring to feel too much. In this increasingly numb world, those who still feel deeply are the bravest among us. So, if someone makes you feel guilty just because you say you are hurting, remember, that is not a safe person. And you don't need to stay to prove anything. You were not born to be a palatable version of yourself. You were born to live fully, clearly, and unblurred by apathy disguised as maturity. And the moment you begin to reset your boundaries, those who once benefited from your silence will start to feel uncomfortable. But that is a sign you are on the right path. Don't fear change. Fear never standing up for yourself. And the cruelest thing about gaslighting is this: it doesn't need to be forceful to be effective. It only needs to be consistent. Like tiny drops of water hitting the same spot every day. It doesn't seem dangerous until a crack forms. And when that happens, you don't just doubt what happened, you start doubting yourself. Every moment you once believed to be true, every feeling you thought was reasonable, is now seen through a lens of suspicion. Gaslighting doesn't just take away your truth. It makes you lose yourself. You begin saying things like, "Maybe I remembered it wrong," or "I'm probably too sensitive." And you stop reacting. You analyze. You make excuses for others, for their behavior, as if the more you justify, the more clarity you'll find. But the truth is, you're just drifting away from that initial feeling, that first gut sense that something was wrong. And then one day, you look in the mirror and you're no longer sure who you are. You don't know what is intuition and what is imagination. You become a recalibrated version of yourself, softer, less assertive, always careful not to upset anyone. But what is the cost of this harmony? It's alienation from your true self. It's no longer trusting your own memories. It's having to verify every feeling with others as if you need permission to feel. And perhaps the scariest part is this: gaslighting can come from the people you trust the most. Those you once believed would protect you from the world, now making you doubt yourself. Not because they hate you, but because they cannot face the truth, and the truth you bring makes them uncomfortable. So they distort it. Simply, gently, sometimes even kindly. But whether in anger or in a smile, your nervous system records the message: you cannot trust yourself. Gaslighting doesn't make you weak. It makes you uncertain. And to break this cycle, you don't have to shout. You only need to do what they fear the most. Stand by your own truth. Acknowledge your first feelings. Believe in your own memory. And most importantly, stop seeking validation from those who made you doubt yourself. You don't need their approval. You only need you. Truth doesn't need acceptance to still be true. And you are not crazy. You are awakening. And in that awakening, you are reclaiming the most precious thing, your own reality. And you start to find yourself growing silent. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned that your words no longer reach anyone. You're still there, in the room, in the conversation, in the relationship, but your soul has long withdrawn. You don't cry, don't get angry, don't argue. You just stay quiet. And that is the most frightening thing. It's not anger that breaks a relationship. It's the silence that seeps in slowly, bit by bit, like water through cracks, rotting everything from the inside out. Silent contempt doesn't shout in your face. It whispers to you through indifference. That you no longer matter. That what you try to say isn't worth listening to. That you should just handle things on your own. And so you start doing that. You hide everything inside. The feelings that were never named, the wounds never soothed, the tears never shed at the right time. All piling up, suppressed, accumulating. Sometimes you think, maybe I'm just too sensitive. But no, you're not too sensitive. You're human. And connection is a basic human need. Like food, like air. You're not asking for too much when you want to look someone in the eye and feel truly seen. But when that is taken away, day by day, you gradually lose the most important thing. The feeling that you deserve to be cared for. Carl Jung once said, the greatest suffering of man is not from circumstance, but from the inability to express his true self. When you live in a relationship where your emotions are ignored, you're not just sad, you're slowly drifting away from yourself. You learn to shrink to avoid trouble. You learn to speak less, feel less, demand less. Until one day, you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the person looking back. The irony is, silent contempt often comes from the people you love most. Not because they are cruel, but because they fear intimacy. Fear facing their own emotions. They avoid by withdrawing. But you think it's your fault. And you try harder, speak more gently, express less, suppress more, hoping to be seen again. But the more you try, the more you fade. Remember this, you don't have to beg anyone for emotional presence. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit inside someone else's heart. If someone truly cares, they won't make you question whether you matter. And if you feel lonely in your own relationship, that is not something small. It is a wake-up call. Because you deserve a space where you are seen, heard, and felt. A place where your presence is not ignored, and your heart doesn't have to compromise. You never choose to be the one who always endures. But over time, you begin to confuse loyalty with silent cruelty. You think that if you're good enough, patient enough, and sacrificial enough, one day, someone will notice and finally see you. But the cruel truth is, the world doesn't reward self-erasure. It only learns to expect it from you. You push your own needs aside and call it maturity. You suppress your anger and call it calmness. You swallow both disappointment and desire, then put on a polite smile. And others start believing that you're okay. But what they don't see is that you're slowly falling apart inside, piece by piece, without a sound. There is a kind of hurt that doesn't come from a single blow, but from prolonged deprivation. A hug that never comes. Thank you, swallowed into silence. A careless glance when you're trying your hardest. It's the pain of giving everything without anyone bothering to ask what's left of you. Worse still, you start blaming yourself for feeling pain. You torment yourself for having expectations. You label your need for connection as weakness. You think silence is the way to mature love. But in truth, it's how you disappear without anyone noticing. Carl Jung once said, "You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And the darkness inside you is what you dare not admit, that you are tired, hurting, and craving to be held completely without having to earn it. You may live in the state of normalizing sacrifice for so long that when someone offers to listen, you don't know where to start. You shrink, withdraw, and smile as if "I'm okay" is the only answer you're allowed to give. But somewhere deep inside, your soul is screaming, see me. Don't just rely on me. Care about me. And here is the hardest truth to accept. Exhaustion is not proof of kindness. It's a sign that you've forgotten that you deserve to be loved just like those you have loved. Not because of what you do, but because you exist. You don't have to melt away to keep others warm. You don't have to prove your worth by sacrificing piece by piece. You don't have to be the strong one, all the time, everywhere. Sometimes, true strength is daring to stand up and say, I need to. I matter too. I deserve too. Because you weren't born to be an anchor for every ship while you yourself are sinking. You were born to connect, to receive, to be held when weak, and to be heard when tired. And you don't need to apologize for that. You can spend a lifetime seeking approval, trying to make sure no one leaves because you are too much or too little, but in the end, you are the one who abandoned yourself first. Not anyone else. Not them. But you, the one who learned to bow your head, smile, and say, it's okay, while your heart was breaking. The one who learned to breathe quietly just to avoid stirring up anger that wasn't yours. The one who learned to suppress, adjust, and shrink little by little just to stay. The painful truth is, you once believed that was love. You once called endurance patience, swallowing tears maturity, and resignation emotional growth. But look closely. If a relationship demands you sacrifice your integrity, your inner peace, even your most primal intuition, then it's not love, but dependence. It's a golden cage you built yourself and called safety. We aren't taught how to say no without guilt. We are taught that submission is admirable, that putting others before ourselves is a sign of a kind heart. But have you ever asked yourself, what happens when kindness becomes a knife that cuts you? When you forgive too much, listen too much, give too much, and forget to ask, what about me? It's time to stop. Not because you don't love them anymore, but because you're learning to love yourself. Not because you don't want to belong, but because you realize that no belonging is worth more than coming home to your true self. You don't have to force yourself to be accepted. You don't need to wear down your soul to fit into a mold that isn't meant for you. True strength is not in enduring the longest. True strength is daring to stand up, walk away, and say, I deserve more than this. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect. It's refusing to put love on the altar of blind sacrifice. It's learning the difference between forgiveness and self-betrayal. It's understanding that you can love someone and still say no when it hurts you. And here's the turning point. You don't need any more proof to believe you are worthy. Your existence is enough. Your feelings are valid. Your boundaries deserve respect. And if someone can't accept that, it's their loss, not your fault. You weren't born to soothe other people's insecurities by suffocating yourself. You were born to live fully, clearly, and freely. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the place that makes you forget that. And then you suddenly realize, the problem was never just about them. The problem lies in the repetition, your repetition. Not because you are bad, but because you learned how to survive. You were raised on tension, so you became familiar with chaos. You grew accustomed to keeping the peace rather than keeping the truth. You yielded not because you were noble, but because you feared losing connection. That was not generosity. It was a defense mechanism. The way you learned to exist in rooms where no one truly listened to you. You began to respond the way you were treated, not with intensity, but with your own absence. You refuse to be angry, but you suppress it until it spills out in nameless ways. You don't yell at anyone, but you keep silent as a form of punishment. You don't show contempt, but your eyes avoid others when they speak their true feelings. You don't use sharp words, but you sigh, purse your lips, smile faintly, all the things you once feared as a child. And then you see yourself reflecting the old shadows of those who once hurt you. Not because you wanted to, but because you were never taught otherwise. So you push yourself to be the good one, the patient one, the understanding one. But deep inside, you are cracking. Self-hatred creeps beneath the mask of kindness. Resentment takes root beneath the layer of patience. And then you ask yourself, why do I feel so empty like this? Carl Jung once said, you do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that is transformation. Not fake positivity. Not ignoring the pain. But facing it. Being brave enough to admit that you've unconsciously continued the cycle of hurt. And compassionate enough not to punish yourself for it. You don't need a perfect version. You need an honest version. This is the moment to stop. Not because you are tired, but because you are awake enough. You look straight into the mirror and instead of asking, "Why did they do this to me?" you begin to ask, "What am I repeating?" And the answer won't come like a flash of lightning. It will come slowly, gradually, like a map unfolding page by page. But that's when you start to redraw your life, not according to fear, but understanding. Not by adapting, but by choosing. You were once a victim. Now you can be the creator. Not by running away from the darkness, but by stepping into it with wide open eyes. Not to seek revenge. Not to erase the past. But to reclaim your power, consciously. Because only when you dare to look straight ahead can you walk forward unbound. The more you mature, the quieter you become. But that is not surrender. That is strength. No one sees the battles you've fought to gain this calmness. No one knows how many times you wanted to scream, to explain, to hold on, but then you chose silence. Not because you were weak, but because you were strong enough to realize that not every battle is worth the scars. There are people who don't need you to say more to understand. And if they choose not to understand, the more you speak, the more you lose yourself. You used to let others' silence make you doubt yourself. You used to let indifferent looks make you feel worthless. But now you know this. Your value does not lie in anyone's approval. It lies in your ability to stand firm without proving, without needing acceptance. You set boundaries, not to hurt anyone, but to protect the part of your soul that you have spent a lifetime healing. Boundaries are not coldness. They are love for yourself. A gentle whisper that says, "I deserve respect, even if I'm the only one who sees it." And you don't need to shout this to anyone. Just believing it is enough. Don't be afraid when others react. Their discomfort is not proof that you're wrong. Sometimes, you change not because you love them less, but because you start to love yourself a little more. Those who benefited from your silence, from your tolerance, will be confused when you step out of the role. They will label you with every name, selfish, cold, overly sensitive. But that is not the truth. That is their fear, not yours. You don't have to announce to the world that you are changing. Just stop reacting the old way. Just start choosing yourself, not with noise, but with quiet decisions. Refusing an unhealthy conversation. Withdrawing from a relationship that makes you feel small. Putting an end to a cycle of repeated pain. This is not giving up. This is liberation. Wholeness does not come from always being happy or always being perfect. It comes from being able to admit, "Today I am tired, angry, sad, and that does not make me any less worthy." You are not your best self all the time. You are human, flawed, embarrassed, contradictory. And that is what makes you real, deep, and strong. Finally, remember this. When you stop shrinking yourself because others think you're too much, you begin to live. When you no longer apologize for your presence, you enter the territory of freedom. And from there, you will find a peace no one can take away, because it comes from you, not from anyone else. You may have spent your whole life making others feel comfortable. You may have stayed silent when you wanted to scream, smiled when your soul was breaking, kept moving forward when every cell in your body was screaming to stop. But this moment, right now as you read these lines, is proof that you have come far enough to realize, not everyone deserves your gentleness. And this is not bitterness. It is wisdom, not punishment. It is a choice. A choice not to trade yourself for one more explanation, one more second chance, or one more forgiveness without real change. You were not born to be an emotional pillow for people who only come when they need to, then disappear when you break. You are no longer here to be the pleasant version, just to survive in others' hearts. The world once deceived you into believing you must be soft to be loved, small to be accepted, silent to be safe. But you have awakened. And when a soul once erased begins to reclaim its voice, the entire universe will shake. Remember this, you don't need to shout to be heard. You only need to stand still and let your energy speak for you. True strength does not need a spotlight. It needs roots. Roots firmly planted in clarity, boundaries, and non-negotiable self-respect. You don't have to win anyone over, you just need not lose yourself again. Those who cannot accept your whole, complete version aren't worth you shrinking yourself to make them comfortable. And if you find yourself caught in the cycle of proving, chasing approval, explaining why you deserve respect, stop. Turn back. Listen to the intuition that has been silenced. It's trying to tell you, you don't need permission to escape the place that taught you pain was part of love. From now on, let your silence be the answer. Let distance be the statement. Let the peace you build be stronger than any storm they try to create. And remember, the strongest thing you've ever done is not forgiveness or forgetting. It's walking away when you finally realize staying is a betrayal to your own soul. You are not cold. You are awake. You are not numb. You are healing. And no one can define you by the chapters that once made you cry. This is your chapter. This is the moment you take up the pen again. Not to seek revenge, but to be reborn. Not to prove, but to simply be radiant, whole, and non-negotiable.